Hi, and welcome back. Today, we're going to have some fun with analog delay, using the new Erica Synths BBD. First, we'll have a quick look at the new module, and then we'll dive into a series of patches, using the delay in different ways. There are some fun things to cover, so let's dive right in. This is the Erica Synths Black BBD. It's a fully analog delay with a wide time range and a lot of CV control over its features. Here on the top is the main manual time control for the delay. It has a control voltage input right here with an attenuator to control the amount of modulation. Analog bucket Brigade chips are known for having a fairly limited time range though, but Erica Synths did something interesting with this module to solve that. There are actually two different bucket Brigade delay lines, one with 1024 stages and one with 4096 stages. With the BBD mode knob here, you can choose which one you want to use. Fully counterclockwise, you hear the faster line, great for effects and sound shaping. And fully clockwise, you hear the line with longer delay times, great for more conventional delays and wide effects. The knob acts as a crossfader between the two delays, so any position in between will result in a multi-tap signal. If you don't use any external control voltage for the time CV input, the module will use its internal LFO as a modulation source for the time. You can set the speed of that LFO with the knob here, and you can set the shape of the LFO using this switch, selectable between triangle, square, and the shape in between. Then there is a manual feedback control knob here, going from a single delay to self-oscillation, again with a control voltage input here at the bottom. There's a dry-wet control knob here, from fully dry to 100% wet, again with a CV input for that right here. This controls the mix for the main output here, but there's also a separate wet output, so you always have a fully wet output available as well. Finally, there are two switches. This one sets the audio input level, at max, medium or off, and this one controls the internal filtering. Analog delays are known for producing a high frequency clock noise caused by the internal clock. With this switch, you can set the amount of filtering in 3 different degrees, with more filtering resulting into darker sounding delays and less noise. This is really clever, especially because of the wide range of delay times on this module. So, depending on how you use the module, you can find the right amount of clock noise filtering. The Black BBD is a great sounding analog delay, and its wide time range and extensive CV control over its features makes it very easy to push the module beyond classic delay duties. Let's start though by using the module as a traditional delay, from slapback sounds to spacious ambient and compositional delays. Here is a simple synth voice with an oscillator, filter, VCA and a sequencer triggering an envelope to create a melody with a short plucky sound. Now you can use the BBD module as a traditional delay by placing it at the end of your chain. You can set up the delay with a short time to create a slapback sound, and let's add a bit of random modulation to the mix CV input to create a more dynamic effect. Of course, you can use longer delay times and use the feedback control and filtering switch to achieve a wide range of delay sounds. Here's another patch with a wavetable oscillator through a filter and a VCA. Again, with a sequencer to control the pitch of the oscillator and an envelope to modulate the filter and VCA. But this time, a slower melody is created. In order to create a nice spacious delay, you can send a copy of the dry signal from the VCA to the delay and multiply the wet output of the delay to 2 VCAs. Then use something like an LFO or random voltage to open and close those VCAs to create a stereo effect. Don't forget to invert one of the signals. You can add some extra modulation to this patch to create more movement. For example, use the gate output of the sequencer to a clock divider, triggering a sample and hold module with some noise. Then you can use the stepped random signal to control the feedback. I like this a lot with some more extreme settings. Besides using a delay to create depth to your sound, it's also a great tool for compositional use. I'm not going too much in depth with this, as you can easily find a gazillion guitarists on YouTube who explain this in detail. But just to give some quick starting points, if you use a sequencer to play a few notes in a chord and match the delay to the tempo, you can use it to build up chords. Or, if you create a sequence and use a longer tempo match delay time, you can create interesting melodies that interact with each other. You can have the delay repeat every third note, for example, and use more feedback to create several layers. The possibilities here are endless. Just like a reverb, a delay is an effect that sounds great on many things. Just experiment with running different things through it. Here are two quick examples with a drum loop and some chords. Delays in more unconventional places can be great to fatten up and mangle sounds, and add additional sound shaping possibilities to something like a synth voice. For example, if you take an oscillator, you can place a delay right behind it to fatten up the single oscillator sound. I really like this to turn a single saw wave into a sort of multi-saw type sound. Just set the delay time pretty quick and use something like a slow sine wave LFO to modulate the delay time slightly. If you feed the result of this setup into a filter and VCA and add a sequencer with an envelope, you have a lot of ways to create sonic variations. You can add to this patch by using an LFO to modulate the feedback input on the delay. Experiment with a delay in different parts of your patch. If you set up a simple voice with oscillator and filter, and then run the sound through a delay before hitting the VCA, you can create interesting delay type effects that are still integrated in the sound volume of the voice. For example, use a sequencer to create a melody and trigger both a short envelope that is used to shape the filter and a longer envelope to control the volume on the VCA. Then add some random voltage to the delay time and an LFO to modulate the feedback amount on the delay. Short delay times can also work great on percussive sounds and drum loops. Just take something like a single hi-hat or sample drum loop and run it through the delay. Tweaking the module by hand is also a great way to build tension and effects during live performances. You can also use a delay with fast delay times to create something very similar to a spring type reverb. Just feed it a simple voice, for example, like this one we used before. and blend in just a bit of wet delay to the sound to make it less dry. By using different feedback and clock filter settings, you can shape the reverb-like sound pretty well. Delays that can self-oscillate can be used as a sound source on their own, and the more ways you have to modulate them, the more creative you can get. For example, you can use a delay as an industrial rhythmic sound source. Just crank up the feedback until it starts making sounds and add tempo synced modulation. Here you see a modular clock driving a clock divider. A fast division is used to trigger an envelope, opening a VCA for a pulsating effect. A slower division is triggering a kick, as well as an inverted envelope, which is passed on to the same VCA for a sidechain effect. Then another division is used to tempo sync a wavetable LFO, which is modulating the delay time and feedback amount on the delay module. It's also worth it to experiment with running samples through the delay with higher feedback settings. Especially if the delay can go full wet, you can create otherworldly effects by modulating the playback speed of the sample, as well as the delay time and feedback on the delay. Preferably all with independent modulation sources like random voltages or LFOs. You can create interesting granular type effects if you feed the delay sound snippets of a sound, and set it to delay times that break up the sound nicely. For example, if you take a single oscillator, run it through a filter, and modulate the filter with a slow random voltage, you create a simple constant drone. Make sure you send the audio to something like an outboard mixer so you can hear the dry sound. Then multiply that audio signal and send it through a VCA. Add a sample and hold module and feed it some noise and a steady clock to create a stepped random signal to open the VCA. Because the noise is bipolar and the VCA is not, by chance about 50% of the time the audio doesn't pass through the VCA, and the other 50% it will pass through, but with different volumes. For some additional depth, you can multiply the output of the delay to 2 VCAs for a stereo effect. Use another sample and hold circuit or LFO to modulate the VCAs for a stereo spread. Then, of course, add reverb to taste. If you like to support this video series, or you want to get access to the PDF sheets of the illustrations I use in this and many of my other videos, have a look at my Patreon. And if you'd like to see more modular content from me, smash that like, subscribe and bell button. But that's it for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.